The dynamic fantasy duo is back off IR for the most part for the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with all the hot topics from around the league getting covered on today's show. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, my fantasy fanatics? I hope you didn't miss us too much because we are back in the lab for the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, your daily 30-minute source for all things fantasy hockey. Today's episode, we are a part of the Locked On Podcast Sports Network, the #1 podcast network in North America. So shout out to the everydayers who continue to make us their first listen. Sunday through Thursday, Steele, we back, baby. And there is a number of hot topics to get to. Make sure you check out the episode later on today. We will have waiver wire targets for week 9 that you need. Today's show, though, my friends, the Minnesota Wild, the New York Islanders, the Golden Knights, and, of course, what is going on in the cage in Edmonton. But over to you, Steele. You're back. I know you're still under the weather a bit, but the Minnesota Wild, hopefully, making you feel a little bit better.
Yeah, they are. Well, first off, apologies to everybody out there for the lack of episodes the last, 4 or 5 days. I don't know what happened. The bubonic plague, the bird flu, cow flu, like
all
I
of
got
it.
Hit,
all
of it. I got hit by a freaking train this week. It has not been kind. I'm still going through it, but I appreciate you, Flip. Appreciate all the listeners out there. The Minnesota Wild have definitely brought my spirits up to a higher level. This is a generational run right now for them. I mean, it was looking bleak at the very beginning of the season. Defensively, 5-on-5, they were one of the worst teams. Goaltending issues from Philip Gustafsson. You've got the wall from St. Paul, Jesper Wallstedt, just again going on a generational run right now, and what he's been able to do down the stretch. 7-0-2 on the season, a .938 save percentage, leads all goaltenders, a 1.93 goals against average, leads all goaltenders. 3 shutouts on the season, leads all goaltenders as well. Kirill Kaprizov continues to just do what he does best and facilitate, score goals, do everything he needs to do to make sure this team is properly successful throughout the entire season. Leads the team with 31 points, 7 power play goals. He does it on 5-on-5, 10 hits, 10 blocks, loves to shoot the puck like we know, 89 shots on net with a 19.1 shooting percentage. They get themselves back into a playoff spot and top 3 in that Central Division. So outstanding job from the Minnesota Wild, who have gone 8-0-2 in the last 10 games. And just on top of that, with how everything is kind of shaping out in the conference in general, in the division, but overall the conference, with the amount of goaltending issues or goaltending injuries that have taken place in that Western Conference, Connor Hellebuck, Lucas Dostal, Aiden Hill, Thatcher Demko. I mean, those are some top-tier goaltenders for some top-tier teams, and those injuries are having drastic effects throughout the standings right now. So I think this is anyone's game. When you go and look at the standings, anything below, I would say, the St. Louis Blues. When you get to the Sharks, Blackhawks, Utah Mammoth, even the Oilers, obviously, it's anyone's game. And the fact that, honestly, the Wild have been able to claw themselves back into, I know it's still early, but they're in a playoff spot. And it goes to show my preseason bold prediction of Kirill Kaprizov being in the Hart Trophy race, making sure the Minnesota Wild are a top 3 team in the Central Division, and in potentially having 105+ point season. That one shaping out pretty well for me. I'm glad the Minnesota Wild are doing well. And once again, Jesper Wallstedt, Philip Gustafsson are holding down the fort tremendously in the blue paint.
And that has been a game changer for propping up the value of fantasy pieces in the forward group, because now what you're seeing, and I watched that game on Saturday night that they dropped in shootout fashion to the Buffalo Sabres. They were in that game the entire way. That could have gone either way. And then we're looking at a team that has even better record over their last 10. Jesper Wallstedt is a first-round draft pick, Steele. This is a 20th overall selection. So now kind of been waiting on this player to really make an impact, and he is here. And the Minnesota Wild have arguably, they have a top 5 goaltending duo in the NHL, and you've got Kaprizov, you're in business. And what I noticed the other night, Steele, and I know Matt Zuccarello's getting a little long in the tooth, this guy is the straw that stirs the drink in terms of distributing the puck. Very
Yes, sir.
calm and cerebral player who also has been so steady as she goes in his career. I know he's been banged up this year. 10 points in 11 games, fantasy value. How about other pieces? Brock Faber quietly up to 15 points, playing better. Matt Boldy, 29 points, fantasy value starting to boom on this team, Steele, and it's coming out of the blue paint. When you have the confidence that that duo has right now, you're even getting peripheral love with the guys like Vladimir Tarasenko up to 10 points in 19 games, Zeev Williams getting it going. This team is now cooking, and when that happens, you need to pounce on it fantasy-wise, much like some other situations across the league. However, Steele, this Edmonton Oilers conversation is starting to get a little bit tired. However, I don't know what your take here is on this situation, other than we know what we feel about Pickard and Stuart Skinner, even though Skinner looked pretty good on Saturday. We don't need to go that far down the rabbit hole. To me, this big rumor from the past week, and there's a few goalies out there. I heard Saros. I've heard other names. Tristan Jarry to the rescue in Edmonton. You and I talk a lot about a player changing scenery and fantasy value going up, or we're intrigued. I don't know about Tristan Jarry getting fed to the Wolves in Edmonton when his numbers have not been pretty. I'll mention those in a sec, and his value going up. Hit me with your take here, because I say if they get Jarry, I don't know how this pans out.
I've seen so much online, and obviously we're not ones to really delve into the rumors, but when it comes to the Oilers and how we feel about Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, you gotta talk about it. And again, this could have fantasy impact, especially if you want to make a trade for one of these goaltenders who could potentially end up on the Oilers roster. Tristan Jarry, I've seen. Jordan Binnington has been linked apparently to the Edmonton Oilers. You see Saros potentially, as we know, the Nashville Predators are opening their doors wide open for pretty much any trade on any player, maybe besides Philip Forsberg and some of those young guns. There needs to be a drastic change. I don't care that Stuart Skinner got a 4-0 shutout against the Seattle Kraken. I mean, it means nothing to me. This is not a goaltender that is going to get you a Stanley Cup. I know he's been there for the Stanley Cup Finals, and I've seen people say like, hey, he got you there. It's like, no, he was riding on the coattails of McDavid and Draisaitl. He's just the guy that they had to go with. And I don't know why they continue to go with him when he continues to put up poor play and poor performances. Again, shutout means nothing to me, except for that one league I have in my fantasy league. I would love to see something change in Edmonton in the blue paint. I don't think those two guys are going to get the job done, especially like I just said. It's open season in the Western Conference. I mean, anyone can really make the playoffs with the way San Jose, the way Chicago, the way Anaheim is playing. Those teams could be a bubble team. Utah could be a bubble team. Oilers have a lot cut out for them, especially because I know McDavid's still top 5 in points as well. I don't think they've been at their best. I don't think McDavid's been at his best. You know, you haven't really seen him transcend the game as we've seen him do in the past. And for me, I just think it needs to start in the blue paint. They're going to have to get creative, obviously, fluctuating the salary cap and you know, opening some space that way. But I do believe they're going to have to make a change in the blue paint before the trade deadline.
And the same old song and dance holds true. They're going to make the playoffs. It's, can this duo carry them? And they've been in the final. We've talked all about it. For me right now, it comes down to the fantasy value, because on a team that scores goals like they can, and they still have 27 points, Steele, let's be clear, they're 4 points out of the top spot in the Pacific. So they're going to make the playoffs. And there is still so much value to be had here in terms of that offensive group. I just need to see something shaken up, because right now, that goalie graveyard that we continue to touch on, it's tough to maneuver. Make sure you stay tapped in for our next episode coming up later in the day. I've got some goalie options. You mentioned Lukas Dostal. It's Peter Mrazek time in Anaheim, Steele. We'll break that down on our next episode. We've got to talk about the New York Islanders, Schaefer, Palmieri, and we've got the Golden Knights to look at next right after the break. We'll wrap it with big-time bets. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and everything feels different. That's what makes live betting on FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place your bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is the best when the games start to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips right after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump in the moment right away. Live spreads, money lines, player props that update as guys heat up. You got everything you need at your fingertips at FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? You're right in the middle of the action this season. Visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game that moves fast, and so can you.
And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Flip, the Vegas Golden Knights are struggling, and I know they're still top 3 in the Pacific Division. Again, this is open season in the Western Conference. It's anyone's game right now.
Yep.
But they're struggling. They went 5-4-5 in the month of November. Defensively, especially in the blue paint, Akira Schmid has just not been able to get the job done or, show any sorts of consistency or reliability. They're in the middle of the league when it comes to goals against and goals for. So offensively and defensively, they're just mediocre right now. Even though Jack Eichel's, doing what he does best, producing offensively, 32 points in 25 games. Mitch Marner's a point-per-game player right now. All those guys offensively, and when it comes to fantasy terms, they're producing. But the overall team right now, I'm a little bit worried about. And it goes to show how important Aiden Hill is. It goes to show potentially Carter Hart getting a really good look. Once, again, maybe in a few days, I believe his suspension lifts up December 1st.
Yeah.
So maybe he gets a good look in Vegas while Aiden Hill still recovers from injury. But it's really interesting to see, again, the dynamic right now of some of the things transpiring in Vegas.
Vegas is at the 6th best power play percentage in the NHL, but they've been getting burned bad on the penalty kill, and I believe they sit in the bottom 3rd in the league on the penalty kill. So the penalty kill has got to be tightened up. And when I take a look at this goaltending situation in Vegas, and I was looking at Akira Schmid's numbers here over the last few games, when the team is allowing you to only face 22 shots, 18 shots on net, and you're losing games, to me, that is the goaltending letting them down. Because if you're only seeing 20 pucks and you're still losing games, that means the guys in front of you are still getting it done. So we've spoken a lot about what Carter Hart's potential could be. With the last few games going like that, headed into his now availability about to happen in the NHL, I'm having a very close look here at what Carter Hart does in his first couple of games, because I don't know if you've heard anything. I haven't heard much about Aiden Hill coming back anytime soon. So if that's the situation that's about to unfold, yes, Steele, we have to look at the Golden Knights because they've struggled. Carter Hart is still going to serve value. And like you said, if they do figure this out a little bit, they should return to not the top couple spots, the top spot in the Pacific Division. I believe you had them as your cup winner this year. They're still a wagon, balanced up front. Very good blue line. We've talked about all the fantasy value. You could have even thrown out fantasy goldmine. Dorofeyev, Barbashev, all those other pieces, in addition to Eichel Mitch and your boy on the back end in Theodore. This team is going to get there. It's intriguing when you see them struggle. Sometimes you look at the goaltending. Right now, that looks like that's the case. Carter Hart, though, that's the intriguing fantasy piece here for me.
It really is. It's surprising to see how many goaltenders are getting injured this season. Again, a lot of injuries happening, and a lot of them, again, to just superstar players, offensively, defensively, as well as in the blue paint. Let's go over to the New York Islanders. Unless you have anything else to add to the Vegas Golden Knights, the New York Islanders are playing some pretty good hockey, especially from their young rookie Matthew Schaefer. I know we've talked about him a few times, obviously on the podcast, but he continues to amaze us in just spectacular ways, fantasy value wise. I mean, when you put him into the conversation already of being a top 10 defenseman in the league at 18 years old, fantasy wise, maybe closer to top 15 rather than top 10, but he's actually been up there. for the most part of the entire year so far. He's a game changer for the New York Islanders. If they can get a little bit more consistency in the blue paint from Ilya Sorokin and David Rittich, they've been okay. I mean, they both have a 901 save percentage.
They've been better.
Obviously they've been better. They both have a 901 save percentage, and I think we both can agree that Sorokin should put himself back into, a top 10, top 7 goaltender in the league fantasy wise. Just haven't seen that consistency, reliability that we've seen from him in the first 3 years he came into the league.
It's true.
But Matthew Schaefer, when you look at what he's been able to do, 18 points in 24 games, 1 game-winning goal. He's getting hits. He's getting blocks.
Yeah.
He's getting shots on net. I want to compare him as closely as I can to Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, because I really do see his game as a combination of those two. I don't think he's gonna put up the exact same peripherals or the same offense as Cale Makar. But he's not going to put as low as he's not going to get as low as the peripherals as Quinn Hughes provides when it comes to blocking. So I think he's somewhere in between there. And obviously he's got a lot more development to go. Again, he's 18 years old, but there's just so much to love about his game when it comes to fantasy value. I mean, he's already a keeper in my mind. Like you said this. You said this at the beginning of the season. I forget what the 3 defensemen that we talked about, but I mean, you hit it right on the nail when you said this is the guy I'm starting. This is the keeper I'm going with.
I appreciate that.
He's been spectacular.
Absolutely stellar. He's getting consideration for the Canadian Olympic team as their final D-man. Does that happen? Probably not. You're going to want to go with experienced guys. This is a big stage, and it's a big-time performance that you're going to need out of their blue line. However, that's just exciting. 18 points. He's +9, 8 penalty minutes. He's eating almost 24 minutes of ice time per night, 31 block shots, 72 shots on net. This is historically good stuff. And I just wanted to mention his impact on the New York Islanders because they have a superstar now, Steele. Not a Matt Barzal, not a quiet guy like Bo Horvat, who are both at times, obviously, especially Bo Horvat, serve a ton of fantasy value. They got their superstar now, fantasy or otherwise, and it's having an impact on this team overall. 6-3-1 in their last 10, and he is the real deal and only getting better. What's interesting, though, since we are talking about the Isles and showing them some love, this is a wild card team, in my opinion. I think they make the playoffs because Sorokin, in my opinion, when he is on his game, and I know it's easy to say that when he hasn't been, but when he is on his game, he's a top 10 fantasy netminder, in my opinion. And Kyle Palmieri this year had 18 points in 25 games, Steele. This guy was serving fantasy value all day long. 20 hits. He might have been one of those guys that you added on the waiver wire because he wasn't getting drafted, let's be real. Or if it was, it's a very, very deep format. 18 points in 25 games. This is going to hurt the Islanders and your fantasy team. So make sure you tap in to waiver wire episode coming up next. They've shuffled the lines around. We'll talk about that on the next episode as well. All I wanted to leave it at, did you see that play where Palmieri got hurt? He tore his ACL. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. He drags his body up off the ice, strips the puck on his way to the bench, feeds it out in the middle for the assist and the game-winning goal, I believe, on that play. So absolute stud. It's going to hurt them in the meantime. Tap into the waiver wire episode, like I said, but wanted to show some love to Schaefer, Palmieri, and the Islanders. A really good chunk of hockey that they've put up of late.
Yeah, Palmieri was one of those sneaky ads that has definitely helped your fantasy team, and he's actually out 6 to 8 months, not 6 to 8 weeks.
My bad. Yeah, ACL.
He is done for the season, ACL, but I mean, that honestly might have been one of the most gut-wrenching injuries, but also at the same time, one of the most outstanding plays that I've seen from a hockey player. I mean, I've seen some stuff. I can't remember exactly who it was from the Boston Bruins. I'm blanking on his name, but remember when he broke his fibula and he continued to play for a minute and a half. It was against the Pittsburgh Penguins. He took a Evgeny Malkin slap shot to the leg, and he literally broke his leg, but he was still out there for a minute and a half. That I put that in the same in that same tier. I mean, he tears his ACL. He's skating back to the bench. He strips the puck, backhand sauce to his teammate, and they end up scoring. He goes down the tunnel, and he's out 6 to 8 months. But you just see you see the grit, you see the hardcore of hockey players, and that showcased it right there of what Kyle Palmieri was able to do. So what an absolute gem of a play, but obviously hopefully a speedy recovery for a 35-year-old vet in the league who has played tremendously this year. When we come back after the break, big time bets, 4 games on the schedule for Sunday. We're also going to have a second episode later today, so stay tuned in for that. But this episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, and even my skin. That's why I've been using Drip Drop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. Drip Drop is part of my daily routine. I'll mix a packet in the morning before the gym or during that midday slump, and it actually tastes so good. Go-to flavors for me are black cherry and strawberry from the Sunburst variety pack, and it becomes my secret weapon for staying sharp and energized through the long days. That's actually what helped me recover over the last 5 days from this illness. Hydration has become a non-negotiable for me. Drip Drop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly just overall better. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button. Leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Rodin. Flip, over to you, my friend. 4 games on the schedule. Where are you looking first?
I'm taking a look squarely at one game. Same game parlay coming in red hot. Not the triple dip, it's the quadruple dip. And I'm going to fire these off rapid fire. This Ottawa Senators Dallas Stars tilt is the gem of the evening. This is going to be an excellent game. However, the Dallas Stars are really starting to roll. They have 15 goals over their last 3 games, and they beat the Utah Mammoth, the Seattle Kraken, and the Edmonton Oilers. And I know the Oilers are having their struggles, but those are 3 pretty good teams, and Dallas just dismantled all 3 of them. Ottawa 6-2-2 in their last 10 games against Dallas. However, this is a different situation. And when you look at Ottawa over their last 3, a little sloppy jalopy aside from squeaking out a win 4-3 against Vegas. So here it is, because Jason Robertson, red hot, 4 goals in his last 5 games. Hit me with RoboCop, anytime goal. Hit me with RoboCop, 4+ shots on net. He's up to 107 shots on the season, Steele, and he's firing the biscuit right now. 4+ shots in 4 out of his last 5 games. Hit me with the Stars on the money line. And my favorite pick in this one, I'd even take it down to 5.5 because I'm smashing these all together. I love the over in this one. Both offenses feeling it. Ottawa's been getting pumped. Dallas has been involved in a ton of crooked number games. I know the head-to-head points to the under, but the recency of both teams, love the over. That's my lock of the night. Dallas on the money line, RoboCop, 4+ shots on net, and RoboCop, anytime goal. I love the 4-leg same-game parlay in this one, Steele. That's going to get you a juicy payout.
I love the anytime. I love that entire parlay. I'm definitely adding that right now, actually. The 4+ shots, the money line, the over 5.5, the anytime goal. He's been one of the hottest players in the month of November. Love that same game parlay. I'm looking at 2 games specifically. Number 1, Washington Capitals, New York Islanders. We got to talk about Jakob Chychrun for a second because he has been one of the best defensemen in the league. He's been one of the best fantasy defensemen in the league.
Yes.
He's absolutely on fire. 10-game point streak. He's got, let me just count this real quick. He's got 6 goals in his last 5 games. He's on a 5-game goal streak, 10-game point streak. He's top 5 in points amongst defensemen, tied for 4th with Josh Morrissey at 23. Wow. He's just that good. So Jakob Chychrun, anytime point for me at -128. Capitals money line versus the Islanders -128. And I'm going to take the Blackhawks at home on the money line at +108 against the Ducks.
Home dog. I like it.
Both teams have just been struggling. They've been mediocre over the last 10. 5-5 for the Anaheim Ducks. I believe it's 5-4-1 or 4-5-1 for the Chicago Blackhawks. Yep. It's very similar over the last 10 games. They don't have Lucas Dostal. Spencer Knight's been really good for them for Chicago this year. I like the Blackhawks at home, and I'm going to take the plus money. They've won 3 out of the last 5 games against the Ducks. So those are my 3 picks. Lock of the night is the Jacob Chychrun anytime assist.
Not feeling the Peter Mrazek backstroke coming in for the Ducks, eh? There's going to be some value there, I think, on a week-to-week basis, just because the Ducks are who they are now, and he is going to be the number 1 guy. However, I like the angle for the bets. I'm excited to talk about our waiver targets. I got those ready to ride. Stay tuned. Later in the day, more fantasy content you need.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And stay tuned in later today for another Waiver Wire episode.
Peace.